Good evening. It is Wednesday, June 28th, 2023, and we're at precisealgorithmtrading.com, and this is Dave. Let's just bust out the markets. The S&P 500 today went up, no, went down a little bit, just a hair, 1 point, 1.5 points, 0.04%. The Dow went down by 74 points. The Nasdaq went up by 36 points. This is all after a pretty nice update yesterday. However, I think it's a little in no man's land. It's exactly the kind of price action that we need for confounding people in the markets. So, a nice pullback. Pull up my nice little highlighter tools. Nice pullback. Whoops. Let's do that again. Nice pullback that we've had, and then a bounce back up. Now, where do we go from here? We've got down signals here, down signals here. This is still pretty up. This is nice and up over here on the weekly. By the way, this is the weekly chart for those that are new to us. This is the daily, and the this stuff in the daily has to happen before this stuff in the weekly can happen. But then again, the weekly is a powerful signal that can drag the daily with it. So it's kind of like I just said two things, and it works like that. They work internally and they work externally. So, or from the inside out and from the outside in. Um, it is confusing, and it's meant to be that way, I believe. So, you're not supposed to be able to just jump in and make money in the markets. You're supposed to buy and hold. That's what people say, and a lot of people still believe in. With all the volatility, though, that method does work in my opinion, but it is like watching paint dry worse than this is. So, and there's a lot more opportunity if you trade more. Also, my opinion, opportunity to win and lose for what it's worth. If you do it wrong, you can really blow yourself up. All right, so I don't know if what I just said there is makes a lot of sense, but we have broken past this high to get to this high, so that's a new recent high, and we have higher lows all the way up. So we're really kind of expecting to put in a new higher low at some point, or what could really happen is you pull back, put in a new lower high, that develops into something like that before we get a chance to take off like that. Um, but there's no reason to really get too far ahead of ourselves because we do this every day. And right now, we're really working pretty well off of this purple line. And you can see it comes up, pulls back, comes up, didn't even make it back to the purple line, came all the way up here in a nice, uh, uh, very big bullish advance. Now we've had a decline to that purple line, and now the question is, will it give up the purple line without a fight, and go back up again? This is 52-week highs, so um, that actually makes it like we're in a new cycle of 52-week highs. Not to mention our Harvard lines that we've been talking about. We are above. Obviously, well, I think it's obvious we're going to be above that for the end of the market this month. No matter even if this falls down to these uh, standard deviation lines. So we will be above the market there. Now, let's go take a look at that and in context. So the Dow, let's talk just about the Harvard lines. Um, get my highlighter. So the Harvard line here, the gold line is the actual signal line. The blue line is the stop. So I mean, back here we've had, this is 2 months of Harvard lines here and here. We had a close above uh, in April, and then it failed. It pulled back up to that Harvard line. It just happens to be like to the tick, it looks like. Pulls back down again, lower high. So we had a high that broke above, so that's a nice head fake. Pulled down, put in a new lower low, then a new lower high, then something in the middle, then a new lower high, and then a new lower low. So then we reversed. This is not a new high. That is a new lower high, or lower low, higher low, I'm sorry. A new higher high at that point, a new higher low, and then you could pick this one or this one and then go to that one. I don't care, they all work. And now we've really come down, and this is probably, in my opinion, well, that's not even, if this was the low, we could call this sort of an equal low, but I think it is a lower low, and so we could be, I think this is one of these times when it looks like it's going to roll over a die here, but we've got Thursday, Friday to get up and close above that line. And we've got negative signals all over the place, which it will be interesting to see if this thing can get itself out of its own way. Now, it shouldn't be lost. Market dynamics actually say most of the time that if the SPX has been taken off over its Harvard lines, and the NASDAQ has, which I know it has, so we're going to be well above the Harvard lines for the NASDAQ. The Dow eventually has to follow, or the whole thing has to come back down again. So I don't think you can really have them be that far off together at the same time for really very long without the whole market going finally in one direction or the other. And then the Russell, which zeroed out by whenever it did. So here's an interesting point. This is probably worth saying. So it has not closed above that line on a monthly basis in the latest any kind of months. And we got up here messing with it, pulled back hard. Now we're right here. Can it get there? And if the Russell gets there, that is small cap stocks. Small cap stocks are harder to get in and out of by the institutions. That would be a very bullish look if that actually happens. That'd be one heck of a bullish tell. If this was a card game, that would be a tell. So stay tuned. And again, we're bullish over here, and we're bullish in all of this. So yeah, my money's still up, and we'll see where this thing goes. The good news is my money can be up and I can pivot on a dime if I have to. The transports, I think, here are also an important thing to look at, because the transports trade in patterns and things a lot like the Russell, and I'm sure somebody out there probably has a good idea as to why, but you can see we didn't close above on a monthly basis. We dorked around with it here and then failed. And then we have been above it for the last half of this month, and it sure looks like now we're going to be up there. So, and it shouldn't be lost that we're on the 786 line of the recent Fibonacci retracements. So, that's another tell. We're above the 786 line on a closing basis. Chances are we're going to get up. I don't know exactly what the odds are, but we're going to get back up to the at least 100% line, and that we may run into some difficulty there. So, and again, bullish across the board on the weekly. And by the way, that's a squeeze fired this week if it holds. All right. And then let's look at oil, which has been awfully back and forth. I've got a stop set for my position, and it looks pretty bearish. However, I've that's why I put a stop in instead, because it was close to the stop. Why just take it off the table if it possibly is going to reverse, is where I'm at with it. So, and these are bearish. These are all bearish. However, it's been so back and forth. It'd be fun if it takes off. Um, and we'll see. We had a little green pop in there to show some sign of potential, and yeah, we'll see what happens. I'm not really not very much one way or the other on this position, and we are in a squeeze, and this is a squeeze fired. It sure looks like it would want to fire short, but we're oversold, technically oversold. We'll see. Overnight, oil's down 0.33% at the moment. Doesn't really mean much. I did want to show you guys this one last night. Well, let's look at TLT for bonds. This isn't what I'm talking about. However, we are, crawling sideways up a channel here. So, and our indicators are working out fairly okay here. It's really slow progress, but I want to show you one that's not, that I actually made a nice profit in yesterday and took most of it off the table just because that was such a big move. And then today we actually got a nice move to the upside that candled out with it looks like the beginning of a potential shooting star, and we are at the 2 standard deviation level. So a pullback into this zone makes a ton of sense before it even has a chance to advance. Not to mention, if you watch this price action here, when it dorks around with these lines, there it got underneath, and then it went down. This came up above, pulling back to here before it gets a chance to go up. Makes a ton of sense to me. So there you go. All right, moving right along. Bullish percent indexes, stockcharts.com. Type in bullish, and let's see if there's anything to write home about here. No change on the industrials. The NYA up 0.51%. The NASDAQ up by 0.08%, so hardly nothing. The SPX, S&P 500, down by 0.33%. Really not much to write home about there. The OEX, which is the S&P 100, unchanged. And then the NDX, which flipped, I think, yesterday to a new column of, or a new point and figure sell signal, which, again, this column of O's exceeded this column of O's to the downside. You read this thing right, left to right, just like any chart, and this becomes a point and figure sell signal. This was a point and figure buy signal when the X's exceeded the X's from the previous column. Now we've exceeded to the downside. So there's nothing to say that can't reverse and go back up here and even put in a point and figure buy signal, but that's not where we're at right now. 57% of stocks in the NDX, that's stocks in the NASDAQ 100, are on a point and figure buy signal. At today, that number went up by 1.79%. So that's how we watch these things. All right. And then the results of our automatic trading systems, still really pretty much the same. Not a lot going on. This is a big slope down. That's been hard to take. This is what it looks like on a 1 year basis. And again, this is a year ago ish. This is now. And so I'm kind of looking for this to take off into the next few months. So we'll see if history repeats itself, which markets aren't the same, but they do tend to rhyme. And then we got a nice bounce out of this one yesterday. Came up. We got a little bit of a pullback today, and it would be nice if this thing would continue its uptrend as well. We've been going sideways now for I don't even know, a month or so. And then the NASDAQ, which was, it's still my favorite, but it did have a terrible pullback here in the last few days, which is totally expected, just like any other terrible pullback that's totally expected after you get a nice rise. We are chopping back up a little bit, which tends to look like one of these or one of these, potentially maybe even one of these. If we get one of these, by the way, over here, and then it pulls back down, don't be surprised if we get something like that before we can go higher. But again, nothing to worry about on the longer term time frame. This is a year's worth of data, and these pullbacks are normal. We got one here, got one here, we got one there. This is about as deep as this one was. So they are normal and they are part of trading. And with that, I will leave you guys for the evening. Have a great night.